Welcome everyone, this is Honest Restart, and this time we're going to be talking about the sequel to Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, now known as The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. We're going to be doing an analysis of the trailer that just came out yesterday at the end of the Nintendo Direct. It's not a very long trailer, it's another 90-ish second trailer like the first two, but there's definitely some details here that we can extrapolate from and perhaps get a better idea of what's going on in Tears of the Kingdom. Still getting used to the name, but we'll get there. So let's go ahead and get started. So right off the bat, that very first note we hear, that piano note, it reminds me of Breath of the Wild because they had a similar sort of musical style for Breath of the Wild. Is there major significance there? Hard to say, but you know, there's a similarity. And I think there's going to be other audio cues that will remind us of previous Zelda games as well, so we'll get to that. But as we see here, if you listen carefully, there's actually a bit of a fire tune. You can hear like a campfire. And as we go through these scenes, we're seeing some sort of tale being told. Now, I want to go back just a couple moments here and just focus on this part. There is this strange character, and this character is someone of significance, it seems. The character doesn't look human, first off. We don't know what this character is. I think some people might think, oh, this must be related to the Sheikah, because we had all the Sheikah monks, and they were also a part of all this ancient lore and ruins and things of that nature from Breath of the Wild. Especially when we take a look at the eyes, there's a similarity there. But I do not think this is Sheikah. I actually think it's related to the Zonai, and we'll get more to that in a bit. But I just want to focus on how this doesn't even look like a person. Look how wide the face is. Look at these ears. Now, it could be the case that this is simply a headpiece, and this is actually a person under a headpiece. But even if you take a look at the face part, it doesn't look quite human. Of course, this just could be an exaggeration because it is a depiction of an ancient character from long ago. But, you know, just something to kind of keep in mind as we move forward here. Definitely some sort of important character that we don't know yet, it seems. Now here, this is also interesting because what we see is basically it looks like the onslaught of Ganon's forces. You see the red lines and the darkness. It appears to be a force of malice, a wave of malice. And you see all the different bokoblins and such attacking a force, an actual army. Now, first thought is, oh, this must be a Hylian army. Could be an ancient Hylian army. But this is being depicted differently than the Hylians we saw in Breath of the Wild. And because we're seeing this other culture here, I'm more inclined to think it could be this other culture. The other culture I'm alluding to is the Zonai. They are a lost tribe, and we have seen evidence of that throughout Breath of the Wild and the art books. So now we have another look here at this character. There's a couple things I want to highlight. First off, you'll see that there's text here. Now, I tried to take a look to see if I can try and interpret this text. I haven't seen anything yet, so I'm not certain of what's going on with this text. I compared it to what we know of the Sheikah text. Doesn't seem to resemble that. I took a look at the Gerudo text. Doesn't seem to resemble that too much either, nor does it seem to match Hylian text that I've seen. I could be missing something. Maybe there'll be another video in the future where we further analyze this. But from what I can see here, we don't know what this text is, which I think strengthens the notion that this could be text from another ancient tribe, another race of people from the world of Hyrule somewhere down the history, which strengthens the argument that this could be the Zonai, the lost tribe that we see ruins of all throughout the world of Hyrule in Breath of the Wild. All those dragon statues and totem poles and things like that, that is from the Zonai. And I think we're going to see more evidence of the Zonai throughout this trailer. Now, another big thing needs to be discussed before we move on here. There's actually a couple things. One, it appears this person, the same character from before, is on some sort of elevated platform apparently in the sky, because we see what appear to be clouds here and maybe even like rays of light. So clearly it's coming from the sky. And then we see what appear to be different orb-like things. I'm assuming they are tears, perhaps the tears of the kingdom. Now, what's interesting about the number 7, there are actually 7 sages as depicted from Ocarina of Time. And given that the Master Sword has been destroyed, since we now know that from previous footage, it might be the case there could be some sort of effort to restore the Master Sword, and this may have something to do with the sages. And even if it's not necessarily related to the Master Sword, let's also keep in mind Ganondorf is being resurrected, and the sages have been used before to help to fight against Ganondorf. So there could be some link here between this number 7, these 7 perhaps orbs or tear-like objects, and just the very title of the game, Tears of the Kingdom. But we'll continue to speculate as we move forward here. So now we see something interesting here. We see what I believe is a woman. I think some people have confused this for Ganondorf somehow. I'm not saying it's impossible, but there's nothing here to me that really depicts Ganondorf. It's a relatively slender body and long hair. There isn't necessarily too much evidence suggesting it's Ganondorf. Now, there does seem to be some sort of jewelry at the head there, so maybe you could argue. But to me, this seems like some sort of sacrificial person. This person is a sacrificial lamb. They're being sacrificed in some way. We even see little pieces of the malice here at the bottom of the screen. You'll see the red lines with the dark outlines there. So I definitely think this is somewhat related to Ganondorf. Perhaps this person was sacrificed to Ganondorf, so maybe he wouldn't destroy them. Keep in mind, this isn't like the Hylian people, it seems. It seems like it could be a different people, the Zonai people. We could be learning about what happened to these people. Why are they gone? Why do we not see any living Zonai people in Breath of the Wild? This could be explaining that to some extent. Now here, interestingly, this character, to me, looks like Princess Zelda, like an old version of Princess Zelda, which could be a little confusing because we have been looking at this stuff and it all looks to be more of Zonai related, right? We see more text here. It's the same difference as before. I can't see any alphabet that matches that we know. But just because most of this could be depicting history of the Zonai, that doesn't mean a previous Zelda couldn't be somehow involved with that history, right? So it could be Zelda. It could be someone that's similar to Zelda. They have long ears. And maybe it's not even Zelda, just someone who looks kind of like Zelda with long hair and of that style. Now, this isn't depicting the current Zelda in the sequel that we've seen the first 2 trailers because she has short hair and all of that. This is something from far long ago. But something else that's interesting here, we can just make out 2 of these tear-like objects together in one bigger circle, and she's holding hands to some extent with another character. I believe I know who this character is. It's the character with the long ears. There's another frame we'll get to towards the end of this analysis that I think will match that more so, but there seems to be some sort of union here, and that may be what's sort of explaining this. Perhaps the sort of like bunny-eared character. I'm going to call the bunny-eared character for now. They work together with Zelda, and that's why we see these 2 different tiers coming together in one big circle. But let's move on. You see a little bit more of the arm, but there's not too much there. Well, actually, before we get to the gameplay stuff, there's like just a little piece you can see there. Clearly this person's taller than Zelda, so that's just something interesting to note there. Could be that bunny-eared creature could be a larger than life kind of character. We'd love to see that in game. But anyways, now let's get on to the gameplay. So another interesting thing. There's honestly a lot of interesting stuff here. So we see Link for the first time in this trailer, and we actually see 2 dragon heads coming together. Now, this is different from what we've seen before. Keep in mind, there's also text here. I really would love to find some sort of alphabet so we can learn and interpret all of what all this means, but it doesn't seem to exist. This is an other culture. But this strengthens the argument that is actually the Zonai. So let me explain. If you look carefully, this symbol here, there's other symbols, but let's focus on this one because it's somewhat visible and easy to tell. We see it in the other shots with the text. So it appears to be the same text from the initial opening sequence of this trailer, yet it's on these dragons that are somewhat, they're kissing each other basically, right? So what's fascinating about this is that we know for a fact that the dragon statues, all the dragon ruins, were Zonai ruins. So now we're seeing this text on these dragon statues. So there you go. This text seems to be of the Zonai. So those opening sequences showing what appear to be maybe the tears and the bunny-eared creature, and maybe Princess Zelda holding hands with this bunny-eared creature, they all seems to be depicting some sort of history of the Zonai. But let's move on here. Link is opening up these big doors. He's coming from some sort of tomb or ruin-like area. He's already garbed in his blue champion's tunic, so this must be a little bit ahead in the game, not from the very beginning when he takes the damage. He's got a shield there. I think the shield might be depicting the Zonai symbol. Now, and this actually might answer a lot for us. So what's interesting about the shield, it may seem like not much at first, but the eye does remind me of the Sheikah eye. However, it's not quite the same. It is certainly different. And when we take a look at the eye that we saw on Princess Zelda or some of these other characters, we thought maybe that could be related to the Sheikah, but it could just be the case that they are the Zonai and they have a similar eye, but it's depicted somewhat differently. And I think this is an interesting idea because I've had this idea for a while that in Tears of the Kingdom, I was about to call it Breath of the Wild 2, we're going to see more of a return of the Triforce, a more active role with that story. And it also means the three different pieces: the Triforce of Power, the Triforce of Wisdom, the Triforce of Courage. The Zonai have been depicted with green energy in the first trailer. And I think the green ties to, well, the Triforce of Courage, something that Link is missing. And he seems to be, going through all this Zonai stuff here. So they could be somehow tied together. And the reason I bring this up is because we already have Ganon, Triforce of Power. It's depicted with the red, purplish malice. And then with the Sheikah, it's depicted with blue energy. And we already know how that all is. Perhaps this similarity of eye, but still different, is suggesting some sort of parity. So you have the Zonai tribe, you have the Sheikah tribe. Two different tribes, both important in their own way, on similar levels, just different. And that's maybe kind of what we can sort of extrapolate from this eye on this shield. But let's move on. Link is opening this up. He's in the skies. We can see the sky ruins. Now, these are actually different places, it appears, because if you look carefully here, there's not any landmass he's running out to. And what's interesting about this is that maybe this room isn't necessarily a dungeon, but maybe like a mini dungeon, like kind of like the shrines in Breath of the Wild, because he just comes right out and here he is in the sky. Like, so there might be a lot of these little mini areas. And again, this shot right here, I think, is of a different area, and just the way things are cut, it seems similar. But since we're already here, there's quite a few things to point out. One, you can see Link's hand. It has the insignia on it. It has the claws. So the destroyed hand that's been perhaps suited up with Zonai technology or magic is still there and very much apparent. But even more interesting is this new thing here we're seeing. We're seeing something that's taking the place of the Sheikah slate. And there's like dials or shells, some sort of container, it seems. And it looks like Link can hold up to 8 of them. There's 4 currently, and there's 4 open spots, it seems like. And they're green. So that seems to also sort of relate to that Zonai energy, that Zonai magic potentially. But let's just kind of keep this in mind and maybe prove relevant as we move forward in this trailer. Everything else about Link, his clothes is pretty similar from Breath of the Wild with the hood and the champion's tunic. But yeah, I'm just kind of going frame by frame here so we can kind of see it all up close. But before he jumps off here, we do see the giant structure that we apparently, I'm pretty sure we saw from the second trailer. So it could just be a different angle there. It could be a different one potentially. I suspect it's some sort of big dungeon, but it could be something else. And we do still see all these big sky islands here. But let's go ahead and I'll go back a little bit just so you can see the whole shot. And Link's gonna jump out and you see him diving. Now, what's cool about this diving stuff is we got a patent, an updated patent recently about all of these diving mechanics or aerial mechanics Link is going to have. And simply based off the emphasis on the sky exploration we've seen with the cover art and things of that nature, it's pretty clear that there's going to be a lot of exploration in the sky. So with these different patents, we're seeing there's probably going to be a lot of different cool sky gameplay we're going to see that we've never seen before. And that's exciting. We're going to see unique styles of gameplay in the air. Moving on here, Link, this is actually a very important moment. The reason it's important because it confirms something that we're concerned for. Okay, so a couple things. First, you can't actually see too much from here. There's a bit of perhaps a cloud barrier of some sort. Now, a couple things from this. I've been theorizing that perhaps the reason we couldn't see these sky islands in Breath of the Wild is because there's some sort of invisible sky barrier. Just like in Skyward Sword, how you couldn't see Skyloft from the grounds of Hyrule because there was some sort of invisible cloud barrier there. However, in Breath of the Wild, we did see the divine dragons, Naedra, Feroth, Dinral, fly into the sky and go through some sort of portal and then disappear. Almost like they're going through some sort of special cloud barrier. Well, we're now seeing here in this footage Link going through the clouds, and that barrier is no longer there. So again, this is cool for a couple reasons. One, because there's that whole element of the story of perhaps explaining why we couldn't see things before. There was an invisible cloud barrier, just like Skyward Sword, but for whatever reason, it is no longer there. It is disappearing, and you can jump straight through to get to the original part of Hyrule, not this land or these islands in the sky. So that's something to sort of keep in mind there, but also keep in mind the whole dragon thing that I mentioned earlier. We'll get to that. But also, importantly, from a gameplay perspective, Link can jump from these sky islands and go straight down to Hyrule. So it's all still one continuous open air world. And that was a concern for some people because we couldn't see all of the elements. There was a concern that maybe they'd be almost like two different zones we could explore separately, and there'd be a bit of a loading there or something like that. It looks like you can just kind of jump straight through and it's going to feel like one open air continuous world, which I do think is the point of the sequel to Breath of the Wild. Now, this is also a fascinating moment here because we're actually rising into the sky, and notice how everything is black and white pretty much, but the object in Link. This reminds me of the second trailer where we reversed the time of that ball, where everything went black and white but the ball and Link. And it even has like that yellow outline that's resembling the Stasis ability, just like with the ball. So this could be perhaps a new form of Stasis. And what's interesting about Stasis, it locked an object in time in Breath of the Wild. And here it could be a different form of Stasis, or something to that effect, where we're reversing the time as opposed to locking the time. And this could have some serious gameplay implications, right? Like in the second trailer, you're able to reverse the time of an object that could have hit you to instead go back and hit something else potentially. And then in this case, there is this piece of ruin that's on the ground, and we're reversing the time and grabbing onto it, using it to get back up high into the sky where it originally came from. That's some pretty cool stuff there. Reversing the time of objects and riding them to go back to where they once were. There could be other implications there, but it's kind of a cool little ability. Just kind of like how in Breath of the Wild there are these different runes and they had multiple applications. I could see multiple applications for this time reversal ability. But I want to go back again, because there's something else here that's worth noting. We see what appears to be a small creature. Or at first I thought it was a small creature. But if you look at the size of Link, and you see how this creature is behind the block actually, based off this invisible part, this creature might actually be kind of big. Now, it almost looks like a bat at first, but you know what else looks like a bat? A dragon. Now, I don't know if it's like a giant dragon, maybe more like a smallish dragon, but it's some sort of flying creature that has a wing, that has a long wing and a long tail and bat-like wings. Like, it's hard to make out the head, but this could be some sort of dragon-like creature. And like I said, if you can see that this is behind the rock and you see the rock size in comparison to Link, this should be even smaller since it's further away, yet it's still very clearly a lot bigger than Link. So this is probably a big creature. And that could be a dragon. Could be. I'm not saying it's like a boss dragon, but it's something. And that's interesting because it kind of further strengthens this motif of dragons being prevalent all throughout the tiers of the kingdom. Let's continue on here. We got Link climbing. That's still a thing. Now, interestingly, he's climbing this branch and not the terrain around it. So I don't know if this is kind of terrain you can actually climb on. We don't have confirmation on that, but Link is in his original clothes from the second trailer. I presume this is kind of maybe the beginning area of the game before he establishes himself and gets all his armor. It looks like some sort of wood axe actually has on his back, which is very cool. There's confirmation you can use different items and weapons, which shouldn't come as a shock, but, there it is. And this is a big shot to talk about here. So, a lot going on here. I'm sure we'll come back to this multiple times in the future, but the most obvious things, there's a whole bunch of islands in the sky. You see some over here to the right. There's clearly stuff above. Oops, I kind of went like really far back. Okay. All right, I'm back. All right, so here we go. There's clearly structures above Link. There's structures all to the right. There's a lot of them. You see some here. You see a big one over here. And actually, if you look carefully, is that my screen being dirty? No, I don't think so. It looks like there's it could be interpreted as clouds, but they also could just be thousands might be an exaggeration, but there could be hundreds of sky islands all throughout here. They're so far back they could just be clouds, but it seems to be like a fairly not so cloudy day, so it's hard to say. We even have some here in front of the sun. They're hard to make out, but it seems like there's clearly a lot of land in the sky. Now we see some sort of tower structure here. There's a hole over here. That's interesting. A big thing to point out here is we're seeing Malice coming out of Death Mountain, just like it's coming out of the castle. The castle didn't go away to space. It's just somewhat suspended into the air. I'm going to assume that Malice holds you back from going all the way into the castle, but there is a giant cavity here, so there could be some exploration underground as well. Clearly, I think at some point we're going to find out what's going on with Death Mountain because there's just Malice erupting from there. But we also see some sort of giant glyph-like thing glowing on the ground right here, right next to Hyrule Castle. What's going on with that? We actually see it again, or something like it, very soon. So, more islands, but also, there we go, Link's riding on some sort of giant paper airplane thing that's not made of paper. It has wings on it, it has text on it there. Something weird going on there, but then we also see another giant glyph. Looks almost like a dragon head. It even seems to have like kind of like little arms there. Maybe that's just like depending on perspective, that might just be part of the head and like the eyebrows potentially. It's interesting what's going on there. I'd be shocked that there aren't dragons because there's so many signs of dragons all throughout here. They just haven't shown them off yet. So it's gonna be very interesting to see why Link is riding this giant sort of like thing that's replacing the paraglider. I'm going to assume it's because he's coming from a far higher elevation, and the paraglider is just a lot slower, and this is simply a faster form of traversal when you're going down through the air. That's what I'm going to assume. Now, another cool thing to point out before we jump to the final segments here is that we're seeing what appears to be a Zonai spiral here at the bottom. It's very similar to what we saw in the initial trailer of the one surrounding Ganondorf. I don't know if it's related. I'm assuming it's this all related to Zonai technology or magic. Maybe the sprouts into the air. Maybe it's a teleport. Maybe it's access to a mini shrine or dungeon. Those are all possibilities there. Beyond that, it does look like Link is flying towards the Gerudo region because we see all those giant canyons. This is probably not too far off from where we saw Dinral near the chasm. Going on, though, let's progress forward here. So, a couple things. One, if you listen carefully, that sound effect that happened as a green dragon circle appeared, very similar to the sounds we were hearing when we saw the green energy in the first trailer. Very similar, right? So I think this is definitely further relating the green energy from the first trailer to all this green dragon stuff we're seeing now. I think it's all relating to the Zonai. That's my opinion, and I think it's fairly well backed up as when you consider everything we sort of discussed throughout this trailer. But what's interesting here, we're seeing this green circle of these two dragon heads connecting each other, but they're not kissing anymore. They're in reverse. It looks almost like an Ouroboros, where you have snakes sort of eating each other, which suggests some sort of symbolism for eternity. This isn't quite the same, but it's very similar. There's got to be something going on there, for sure. We'll continue on this just a little bit more. So, there's several big points to make here before we close things out. As they show the subtitle Tears of the Kingdom, they make like a bell-like sound. It honestly reminds me of the tier collection quest from both Twilight Princess and Skyward Sword. It may be some relation to the Sacred Realm potentially, or even it could just be to the idea of suggesting that there's another realm beyond Hyrule, as there was in both Twilight Princess and Skyward Sword with the Twilight and the people of Skyloft. It could be something as simple as that, or simply just a similar sound, a bell-like sound. But we do see the two tiers, let's call them tiers for now, connecting to each other. We saw this shot earlier in the trailer, but now it's covered up by the logo, but we see what appears to be Zelda. They're holding hands in that circular way like before. There's this taller character, which again I said would be the bunny-eared character, and we do see those long ears. So there's some sort of union going on there. This is kind of just basically further confirmation of that. There's one more big point to bring up here, and that's the Master Sword. We see the Master Sword hilt with a piece of the blade. It's rotting here at the core, but in the second half that we know that's missing based off one of the previous trailers, it's gone, it's broken, but now it's covered with like this rune-like energy that is very similar in color to the dragon heads, the green energy of the Zonai, seemingly. So it could be the case that we may not even restore the Master Sword in a normal way. It may be powered up through this special green like Zonai energy. Regardless, it's clear that a big part of this game is going to be about restoring the Master Sword or strengthening the Master Sword in some way, or at least it's alluding to more so this Zonai technology or whatever this tribe is. I keep assuming it's Zonai. I feel like it's pretty well backed up here. Could be something else, but there's clearly some sort of tribe or kingdom that has suffered, and Link is going to be helping them in some way. Could be just tiers of the Hyrule Kingdom, but it also could be tiers of the lost Zonai Kingdom, or maybe it's both, which I think there's actually a good chance of that. This could be a name that has a multi-meaning effect, as I feel most titles for Zelda games usually do. But anyways, guys, that's pretty much my analysis of this trailer. We know it's coming out May 12th. That's great. It's a little bit beyond the fiscal year, but hey, it's still coming, and it's only about 6 weeks later than expected, so that's fantastic. But anyways, everyone, let me know what you guys think in the comments below about what's going on here with the sequel to Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, which we are now calling Tears of the Kingdom. I'm very curious what you guys have to say. But that's all for now, everyone. Take care. Bye.